Carlos Ghosn, who is the Chief Executive Officer and President of Nissan Motor Group. It is probably the most volatile industry in the world today, and here's a man who has faced and is facing and will face great challenges in the years ahead. And without any further ado, I introduce Mr. Carlos Ghosn.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm not going to start with a long speech because we can talk about many subjects. We can talk about the auto industry, we can talk about Nissan, we can talk about Renault, we can talk about the Alliance, we can talk about technology, we can talk about the environment, we can talk about management. There are so many topics. So I know that you have selected a lot of questions, so I'm going to let you drive the discussion the way you want. That's why if you know, no introduction is needed, because I don't know, frankly, how to introduce to a public like this one, which is extremely diverse, and I don't know what are your point of interest. So I'm going to turn it immediately to you and let you start your questions. Hopefully, I'm going to be as straightforward as possible, as usually. You'll understand that on some points, as you mentioned, the presence of media would lead me to be extremely cautious because I have enough dose of front page. I don't want to take more than I deserve. So that's why on some specific issues, I'm going to hold up the question or be very political, which is usually not my style. But knowing that this is not purely student conference, you will notice it very immediately, by the way, when I start to be very cautious. Now I'm turning to you. You prepared some questions?
Yes, we have collected questions from our students, not only the ones that are here with us today, but the ones around the world that couldn't be with us. So our first question, how are Japanese companies the most different from companies from other countries? For example, how is Nissan different from Renault or Michelin? And how have you overcome these differences?
Yeah, well, not only Japanese companies are very different from companies coming from different countries, but Japanese companies are different between themselves. I don't think the myth of saying the Japanese company doesn't say anything, because like you cannot say the French company or you cannot say an American company, because between General Motors, Google, or you know, there are such a world difference in terms of management, product, the way you approach things, and changing all the time. So I don't want to talk about the Japanese company, because I don't think such a thing exists. You have Japanese companies, you have Japanese styles, you have Japanese management cultures, and they are very different from one company to the other. There are some specific points which are common to the Japanese culture, which are different and specific to Japan compared to what you can find in China or in India or in the United States or France. And that's what maybe I can spend some time telling you about what I think is very specific to the Japanese culture, that you can find not only in companies, but you can find them in administration, in government, in association, in cities, in different communities. So obviously I'm going to take some of the points, and you're going to see that each point is at the same time the strength and the weakness. You know, people usually say you've been a management student and you start always with a SWOT analysis, okay? Always start with that, okay? Weaknesses, strengths, opportunities, threat. Well, life is not easy like this, because from time to time, one thing can be at the same time a weakness and a strength. The same event can be at the same time an opportunity and a threat. And trying to divide them in two parts can be very misleading, because you put it in threat when you're afraid of the opportunity. You put it in opportunity when from time to time you downgrade the threat. But practically everything is in the middle, and you choose if you're going to put them in opportunity or threat, if you're going to put them in strengths or weaknesses. Let me come back to your question. What's specific about Japanese culture that you can find in most Japanese companies? First, the Japanese companies and Japanese culture is very process-oriented. That's one of the most process-oriented culture in the world. That's very important. So at the same time, is it a strength? Yes. If you're a car manufacturer, whoa, that's a strength. Because car manufacturing is all about processes. All about processes. You know, you you find processes in technology, in manufacturing, in assembling, in logistics, in everything. So when you are in a country where people are inclined naturally to build process, to work following processes, it's a strength. Compared to a lot of countries where you have to push people to go toward processes, establish standards, following them, it's a strength. And what goes with processes, this tendency to identify processes, work with processes, is what is called and recognized as a Japanese discipline. Japanese discipline word recognized. It is linked to the fact that Japanese like processes, identify processes, and this strength can be from time to time a weakness. How? Well, very simple. Well, from time to time in Nissan, when we're talking about the subject, I had many foreigners, I'm not talking about French, but even Americans, that are telling me, but you know, my team doesn't want to do that. I said, no, I don't understand, I don't think so. Because, why? Because when you say something has to be done, and you do not identify the process by which it's going to be done, nothing happens. So we will say, oh, there is resistance. No, there is no such a resistance. But as long as the process is not identified, nothing happens. Or if it happens, it's completely non-productive. So I would say process-oriented, discipline-oriented, this is very big strengths of Japan. It can be from time to time a weakness, because when you have to act without the process, there is a low speed, there is lack of productivity. You know, that is very important. I don't know how much you go through the statistics on the manpower in Japan. Say, the Japanese are the most productive in manufacturing or engineering, practically in the world. And they are the least productive in all the support functions, in all the administrative area. This is official statistic coming from Japanese government. Why? Very simple. In engineering and manufacturing, processes are everywhere. In all the support function, you can hardly find the process. So obviously, there is a lack of productivity. And the best company in Japan, what do? They take processes that they have in manufacturing engineering, they transfer them into HR, into accounting, into finance, into marketing, and then they become dominating in Japan and outside Japan. So that's one feature. Let's talk about something else. I think something also which is very important in Japan is there is a sense of community which is very important. Okay? Strengths, weaknesses, same thing. It's a strength. For a company, it's a strength. Sense of community means people come to a job, they're looking for who is part of my team. How can I build the sense of a team? What is my community? How am I going to support the team? People easily, without discussion, will accept the better good to the individual good. Obviously, that will defend also the individual good, but not on detriment of the common good. It's a strength. Is it a weakness? It may be a weakness. Why? But when from time to time somebody has to stay out of the field, somebody has to go against the tide, somebody is going to have to face the teammates or the culture and say, no, there is no more hope and there is no more potential behind it. We're going to have to go in another direction. And this is very difficult when you have a very strong sense of community and when you have to go against the tide. Again, strengths, weaknesses. For the auto industry, obviously it's strengths because we're in an industry of processes, we're in an industry of teams, and you have to build them. You know, I can spend the whole hour on this thing, but that's a fabulous area of analysis. Again, when you read it in books, it can be boring. When you discover it in real life, it's essential, because when you understand that, you can get the best out of people. You can get the best. Knowing a strength can be a weakness. Now, if you see the strengths and you fortify the strengths, well, you're going to get more and more out of people. And the weakness is going to go down. Obviously, if you look at it as a weakness, you're going to strengthen the weakness and you're going to paralyze people. I have an interesting anecdote about how French and Japanese work together. When the alliance started between Renault and Nissan, we had at the beginning French people meeting with Japanese people, and there was obviously a lot of defiance. You know, people were defiant a little bit. They were saying, okay, how are we going to work together? As you know, in the French culture, intelligence predominates. Okay, smart guy is very important concept, mathematics, etc. Execution is a completely secondary. Okay, a smart guy is somebody who can play with concept, have a nice strategy, very good in mathematics. What he does after with it is something which is minor, okay? Not so important. It's, you know, to make a living, etc., not so important. That was very strong in the French culture, always in changing now. In the Japanese culture, well, concepts are a little bit suspicious. You know, if somebody comes with a lot of concept and you don't explain what you're going to do with them, you don't explain the practicality of it or the use of it, it becomes a little bit suspicious. So you imagine that the French engineer working with the Japanese engineer, there are going to be a lot of suspicion from one side to the other. Why? Because the Japanese engineer is going to listen to the French engineer and say, you know, he's probably very bright, but what's he going to do with that? Okay? In execution, he's very slow, or he doesn't know how he's going to use this to transform the reality around him. Well, on the other side, the French is going to say, well, you know, my Japanese colleague is not interested into the concept. He's interested only into doing. Now, if you reverse it, if instead of looking at the weaknesses, you look at the strengths, then the French is going to say, okay, I'm going to be able to learn from my Japanese colleague the importance of processes. So, my basic strengths is going to be complemented by the strengths of the processes and the execution. So my ideas are going to go to the reality and to the transformation of the reality. And then the Japanese is going to say, okay, I'm very good into establishing process transforming the reality, but maybe some of the ideas which are developed by my colleague are going to give me much more opportunity to work with. So you can see that, again, from the same situation, you can go to total gridlock, where everybody's criticizing the other by saying, he's different, you know, and limiting yourself to that. Or you can say, what can I learn from him? What can I learn from him? And I can tell you that the Japanese culture, coming back to it, has a lot of things different from other countries. That's why it's a perfect company to make an alliance with or to work with, because there are so many things you can learn by partnering with the Japanese company. So I'll stop it here because I know you have other questions.
No, you were talking about Japanese productivity, and there have been studies that show that Japanese productivity is actually quite low because of the long hours that Japanese workers put in. And some studies comment that by lowering working hours, Japanese companies could raise overall productivity.
Yeah.
Could you comment on this?
Yeah, well, I don't agree on this. I don't agree on this. I mean, first, yes, Japanese people work long hours, and particularly they work long hours in areas where processes are not very clear. Okay? Because I can tell you, in manufacturing, people don't work. It's very organized. We have thousands of people working in our plants. They don't work long hours unless we ask them, because we need more cars. We ask them to do 2 or 3 hours, but everything is organized. Everybody knows exactly what he has to do. The processes are clear. It's very productive. I don't think people spend time, you know, lingering around or wondering what they're going to do. Very productive, very effective, not a lot of long hours. If there are long hours, it's only because people want to do long hours, because they are interested in earning more money, or helping the company, or doing something like this. Now, where you have long hours, there are areas where you have no processes, or the processes are broken, like in support functions, you know. I mean, I don't know how many of you have tried to, I don't know, open a bank account, or with a very traditional Japanese bank. It's awful, the number of paper you have to sign, the number of people you have to meet, the number, I think it's extremely complicated for nothing. That means that no added value for the customer. From you go to a Japanese plant, everything is in place, very simple, very smooth, there is no stock, no inventory, looks like there is nobody in the plant, nobody's moving. Why? Because it's very effective, very organized. So both of them are both sides of Japan. And for me, it's not about Japanese culture. It's when you have processes, when people have taken the time to identify processes and train people, it's very effective. When people do not care about processes because eventually they don't consider it as their core business, well, then people spend a lot of hours. And frankly, they spend a lot of hours doing things which are often unproductive. I can tell you, we had the same problem in Nissan. That means in the headquarters of Nissan, where you have all the support function, people make a lot of hours. And our first and most important thing is not to tell them to do less hours, because that's very frustrating. Fix the processes. Fix the processes. Identify, organize the processes, then automatically people will work less. And on top of this, they will be more satisfied with their job, because they have the impression that they are useful. Well, when they are working around broken processes, not only they work a lot, but they have the impression that they are not very useful. So I don't think that by cutting the hours you're going to solve the problem. No, you're going to make people more frustrated. What you should do is every time you have people overworked or working long hours, say, what are the main processes here that we should identify, that we should reorganize, and you're going to see a huge transformation into the work. That's what I can tell you. So cutting the hours is like somebody who has a sickness and trying to take a medicine to lower the temperature, the fever. If you lower the fever but you don't treat the origin, the sickness is going to come much bigger. And I think the organization into the support function is the real solution.
So what do you predict will happen in the automobile industry 10 or 20 years from now? Do you think automobile manufacturers from India or China will begin to compete with the current manufacturers?
Well, you know, we have a hard time predicting what's going to happen next year in the automobile. But I can tell you that in 10, 20 years it's easier production because nobody will remember what we say 10 years down the road, and nobody cares about what we say. Okay, now let's play to this game, even though we don't give it too much credibility. 10, 20 years. Well, yes, there will be more car manufacturer coming from China and India, and it's normal. It's normal. You know, still, the media is having a hard time admitting the fact that we're going from a bipolar world, Europe, United States, to a multipolar world with Europe, the United States, China, India, the Middle East, Russia. That's it. That's a reality. And all the consequence of it. What is the consequence of this? Well, China is going to become one of the 3 largest automobile market in the world. It's natural tendency that Chinese people would like to say, we don't want to be only consumer, we want to also be producer. You know, we are one of the largest market in the world. We want to have made in China kind of car and have a Chinese brand. It's natural, it's normal. India, well, India is another powerful country coming. Also, same thing, the market is going to grow. You have more than 1 billion Indian. And they also want to, they don't want to be consumers only, they want to be producer. And they say, we're going to get a shot at it. So I would not be surprised at all. I think it would be very natural that you will have, in 10 years down the road, at least one big Chinese car manufacturer. You may have 10 or 15 years down the road, one big and strong and competitive Indian car manufacturer. And from the other side, you're going to see some car manufacturer from the formal organization, we're going to disappear. I'm going to consolidate because probably there are too many European, Japanese, and American car manufacturers, maybe too many of them, and not enough Chinese and Indian. Why I'm saying this? For example, let me talk about the Indian. I can talk about the Chinese, but let me take India. I mean, the Indian car manufacturer is very interesting because they don't try to copy the Japanese cars or the Western car. They're trying to come with their own car. It's obviously different. So where do you start? You're not going to start by saying, well, I'm going to compete against the luxury cars. I'm going to come with a car which is going to be very frugal to address the needs of people who are in developing countries. So they're addressing cars which are $5,000, $4,000, now coming with a $3,000 car. And that's why they can be very competitive, because they can, if they can make a breakthrough, but they're going to be alone. Because there is no such a $3,000, $4,000 car presented today by any car manufacturer. So we have to watch very carefully what they're doing here, because it is through the unmet needs of consumers in the world that Indian car manufacturer may come, or Chinese car manufacturer may come. Totally normal, totally predictable. I don't know how many of them will come, but some of them will make it. But they will make it by introducing something that other car manufacturers will not be able to do. I don't think that they will do it by copying what other car manufacturers do. I think they will do it by bringing their own contribution to the car industry and to the consumers.
Can you tell us what the corporate strategy of Nissan is towards eco-friendly cars?
The environment is a very sensitive issue today, and obviously there are a lot of things that a big company has to do, knowing the new reality about the environment. People today are sensitive to things they didn't care about 10 years ago. And we have to be very attentive to it without overblowing it or understating it. So you have to be always in the middle, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer who's going to make the decision. What's our strategy? First strategy is there is no technology that you cannot develop. No. Every technology which can become in the future a breakthrough technology, you have to control it. That's number one. So what does it mean? It means that we are working obviously on every single variation on gasoline engine, diesel engines, flex fuel, that means engines which work with ethanol, 100%, 80%, 70%, whatever you want, what you call the flex fuel. You have to work on hybrids. Hybrids is a car with two engines, a motor for electric and a gasoline engine or a diesel engine. You have hydrogen cars moved with hydrogen. You put hydrogen into the car and then you roll it. That's what we call the fuel cell. All these technology can lead to mass marketing. I'm sorry, I forgot the electric car, which is also very important as number 6. So each one of them can lead to a breakthrough on the market, but we don't know. Obviously, car manufacturer, each one is going to develop this technology, and when one of them thinks he has an advantage, he's going to push it by saying, that's the solution. Okay, that's the solution. But I'm not going to give you an example, you know one of them. Saying, I'm better in this, so I'm going to say, that's the future, I'm green, look at me, etc., etc. Okay, that's normal. That's a natural game of competition. What I think will happen is you're not going to have one solution. You're going to have many solutions, not only between countries, but between the use that you do. For example, I have no doubt about it that ultimately only electric car will be in cities. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to take 5 years, 10 years, 15 or 20, but at the end of the day, the only way, the hybrid is not a solution. Why? It's minus 20%. Well, minus 20% is not enough, because you're going to have a lot of people going to tell you, but you're still emitting 80%. If you want to emit 0, take the guilt out of the driver, electric car. 0 everything. 0 noise, 0 CO2, 0 emission, 0 everything. Okay? Now the question becomes, how do you make electricity? If you make electricity out of coal, you're not in better shape. Okay? But it's not the car manufacturing anymore, it's the energy problem. Now, but if you make the energy out of uranium, nuclear, solar, yeah, now it becomes a very interesting proposal. But what's interesting is that get the guilt out of driving the car. And this means electric cars. So I am personally convinced that electric car will become, maybe we will not see it, but our kids will see it, the main use in the cities. And you're seeing a lot of cities already putting incentives to get the car out or to get zero emission cars. And the zero emission car is electric car. Now you come to this, what is the key to electric car? Batteries. That's all. It's battery technology. Now, former electric car has a huge battery, not very reliable. You used to do 80 kilometers in the car, which obviously when in your car you do 400 kilometers, so you want much more autonomy. Very expensive. And it takes 8 hours to charge it. So if you forget to charge your car, you're stuck. You cannot drive it. Okay? So that doesn't work. I mean, you cannot say, okay, I have a car. When you go, it looks like a truck. You have a huge battery. The battery costs a lot of money. You have to change it from time to time. You have to charge it for 8 hours. It doesn't work. You have to go for, be able to charge it in 20 minutes. You have to have an autonomy of at least 200, 250 kilometers. You have to have a reasonable price. People are ready to pay a premium, but not so much. I mean, all these things need to be fixed before you say, oh, that's an electric car. Because everybody uploads electric car. How much is it? 3 times the price of a normal car. Okay? Then on top of this, there is no guarantee in how long the battery is going to. So people are not going to buy this kind of technology. So coming back to the point, develop all the technologies. But then after you develop all the technology, put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. What is he going to buy? Don't take the consumer who is a super smart engineer, passionate about car, and who's going to understand all the details. Put yourself into the shoes of somebody who doesn't care about cars, who want to pay the minimum necessary, and say, how am I going to persuade this person to buy my product? And then you solve the problem. Now, develop a lot of the technology, then choose the technologies which are well adequate for driving in some countries, Japan can find a different solution than the United States or to Europe. But today it's a fact. Europe is more than 50% diesel engines. Okay? In Japan, you have zero diesel engine. In the United States, you have zero diesel engine. So already, we know that the solutions in terms of technology are different from one country to the other. I think we're going to see more of it. So that's our strategy. Now, in the meantime, you have a battle between car manufacturers about, I'm greener than you, okay? And, you know, you are a bad citizen, you have dirty cars, I have, right? This is normal business. You should forget about it and say, what do the consumer want? What is he buying? 65 million cars were sold last year in the world. 97% of them were normal combustion engines. And all the rest were still niches, interesting niches, but nothing else. So the breakthrough did not take place yet. It will take place. But it's very difficult to say in advance what are the technology that's going to be prevailed. But my bet, if there is only one I will make, cities will be based on electric cars. That's it.
Now, there are so many sides to management. There's marketing, human resources, finance. Do any of these come easy to you? And which are the most challenging for you?
Well, I don't think you have different sides of management. Is one thing. It's about one thing. It's about how you make people do things that naturally they will not do. Feel good about it. That's management. Management is not, you know, I'm coming a job, everybody well paid, company's doing well, I have technology, I have a brand. That's not management. That's not management. You can see management in tough situations where a company is struggling, you have a problem, you're going downwards, and you're going to ask people to do tough things and be motivated about it. You know, feel accomplishment. That's management. That's real management. All the rest is not management. It's administration or whatever you want to call it. But real management, in fact, management is about people. There is no such a thing of management of business. It's managing people for business purposes. It's always about people. And what is the key element of management? It's motivation. That's it. That's a key word. Always keep an eye on your people motivation. It's pretty hard. You know, people say, oh, that's it? Oh, yeah. You know, keep people motivated. Yeah, you can do it for 24 hours. It's fine. Maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, 50 years, 20 years. I mean, that's keep people motivated. Keep your people motivated. Now, when your people is a team of 10 person, you can see in the eyes, and from time to time, it's fine. When there are 100,000, it's a little bit more difficult. When you have 500,000 people on all the continents, it's a different story. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them all motivated all the time, in all the countries, and in all the functions? That's management. And when you keep them motivated when things are going down, because from time to time, things will go down. There is no such a thing of a company which is surfing above difficulties and always. It's not true. When you see a company doing this, it means they are hiding their problems. That's what it means. They are hiding their problems. Because management is about problem solving. It's about how do you react, how to adapt to difficulty that you are facing. That's management. And how you keep your people motivated through the process. And there is not one set of rules. There are some basics. You have to follow the basics, but you have always to adapt to the evolution of society and trends and expectations. So you cannot say I'm more interested about HR or I'm more interested about communication. It's a whole. It's look at your people, what's going to motivate them, what they are disappointed about, what are the things that they don't understand, that they don't like, and try to see what's the best way you can drive them back to your main purpose or to the main purpose of the company. That's why you come back to the question that means the most important element of leadership or management. I mean, some people say, well, he has to be skilled or he has to be smart, expert, etc. Not at all. Connection. Connection. Ability to connect with people. That's very important. That's very important. Because you have the smartest person possible, the most expert. He will never drive people to go the extra mile. Never. The ability to connect with people, establish this connection, is extremely important in order to do something with, at the level of a company. That's what I can tell you from my own experience.
Okay. Now, time management must play an extremely important role in your daily life. Do you have any secrets to managing your daily schedule and time?
Well, I am in a particular situation where, as you know, I'm managing two companies, one based in Tokyo and one based in Paris. I'm not managing two companies because managing one company is boring. It's not that, some people say, hey, you're managing two companies, so you know why, you're managing two is too much. It's like I chosen to say, okay, you know what, I'm CEO of Nissan, and I'm a little bit bored, I need more challenges, so I become CEO of Renault also, okay? No, it's not like this. I mean, Renault and Nissan are two companies linked through an alliance, And because of this alliance, we came to the conclusion that for the time being, it's much better to have the same CEO on both companies, which obviously very demanding, very demanding. Now, you cannot do that, impossible to do it if you are not very, very organized, number one. And second, if you don't surround yourself strictly with very professional people. Right? You cannot have a rookie coming and being your assistant and taking 3 months to learn how. You cannot do that. You want to make sure that your executive committee is very strong. You want to make sure that your assistant is very strong. They know what they do. That it don't take 2 hours to do something. It takes 3 minutes. And they are going to anticipate the next shot before even you talk about it. These are the kind of people that you need if you want to do a job like this. Now, it's particularly difficult, obviously. It's very demanding. But the basic thing is you do it only if it's needed by your organization. And second, be extremely organized and extremely disciplined. When I say organized and disciplined, it doesn't mean that you don't do certain things that you need to do. I still go to the plants. I go visit the gamba. I do it less often than before and less than I would like to do it. But I think going and meeting people on the front line is very important. But I make sure this is decided before even the year starts. For example, the 2008 schedule is already fixed. I can tell you now when I will be doing in September 2008. Okay? Day by day, where I'm going to be, in what country, what I will be doing. And this has been already divided to take in consideration not only the official meeting, executive committee, board meeting, nomination committee, etc., but visit of plants, visit with engineering on technology, visit to some specific countries, India, China, Brazil, United States. Everything has been scheduled. So after this, I know that I have a balanced schedule between Renault and between Nissan, and I just go and do it. So organization, discipline, and being surrounded by people who are really professional is very important.
Now, you've had tremendous success despite the huge amount of stress that must come with the job. How do you unwind and relieve your stress?
Well, everybody has a different way to stress. Anyway, you all know it. We know it. Nobody is immune to stress. Nobody. Stress is part of life. By the way, medical people tell you you need stress because if you are not stressed, stress moves you, allows you to jump from your bed and go to your work and jump. If you have no stress, you take everything relaxed. Problem comes, you relax about it, nothing gets done. Okay? So some dose of stress is normal for life. Now, how do you control it so it doesn't go across the board and doesn't make you miserable in your life? That's what we are talking about. I mean, you have to have your own motivation. Some people, every person has a different motivation. How do I relieve my stress? I personally never bring back work at home. Never. Never. I don't stay on my computer. I don't read reports. When I get back home, I'm home. Okay? I try to avoid working weekends. Which today is an exception. Yeah, but you see, today I'm in Tokyo and the family and the kids are in Paris, so I can say, okay, fine, I can do it. So, but usually I don't. When I'm in Paris with the family, with the kids, I stay with them. Okay, that's very important. Why? Because I'm having a lot of fun. Okay, and they know that when I come back home, I'm for them. I don't come with my computer, sit down, okay, and say, while I'm looking at my email, okay, what do you have to tell me about your latest? No, this doesn't work. When you sit down with them, 100%. 100% for them. So not a lot of time, quality time, totally dedicated, and it's fun for me. It's obviously fun for them, hopefully. If not, they won't do it. But it's very important to have areas of interest where you can just forget about your daily problems, so you can come back fresh to the work after it. For me, it was my family, particularly the children, because they need you. But nobody is going to talk about his wife, because from time to time it's good, from time to time it's not so good. It's a challenge from time to time, but it's part of it. It's part of it. But I'm saying for the kids, it's very important, and it's one way to remain young. You know, I don't know. Some of you have young kids. I have a 13-year-old boy, 15-year-old girl. When I go out with them, it allows me to know what are the latest musics and fashion and colors and names. If I don't go with them, I would be completely obsolete. I would become really, you know, a kind of old generation guy. But they maintain you alive. They maintain you aware, connected about what's coming. They maintain you aware about what are the trends, what are the things that young generation are very sensitive to. So that's my way of relieving stress, forgetting about it, coming back home, you know, going to the movie, read books, go through the story of the school. That's very important. On top of this, I do some sports. I think it's very important. People tell you that if you don't exercise your body, well, some amount of stress will remain with you, while by doing some minimum of exercise, you can relieve it. These are the kind of things I do.
Do you have a role model or personal hero?
I have a lot of heroes, not one, a lot of heroes. And frankly, I think not so many, that if I give you some names, you will not recognize them, because they're not very famous people. From time to time, I'm very impressed by the dedication of very simple people. And just observing what they're doing, how they're doing it, is for me a lesson. It can be very simple people in very situation. I think if you can keep your minds open and listening and observing what people do around you, there are a lot of lessons you can learn without having to go to management books or to success stories to learn about what has to be done. That's my way of maintaining my self-challenge and learning around me.
Does language present a problem working at Nissan?
Oh, it's always. No, language is always a problem. That means right? You come to a country, you don't speak the language, 50% of your potential is already lost. Because that means management is about, as you said, people motivation. Huh? How can you motivate people that don't understand you? That's a basic question. You need to connect, and the first connection is the language. So that's why usually you need always to try to learn the language. Very important. How can you learn a language? First, out of motivation, you need to be motivated. Why people learn a foreign language? I mean, for example, today people all learn English. Why? Because they're motivated for their career. They don't learn other languages because maybe they like them, but they're not motivated for them. So I think you need to have a motivation. Usually somebody learns a language when, I don't know, I've seen many of my friends, they learn Chinese because their girlfriend was Chinese. So they have a strong motivation. Or they married a French, so they start to speak French. So if you don't have motivation at the base, you're not going to learn a foreign language. You have to have motivation. So for me, it's the same thing. Every time I learned a language, I was very motivated to do it. At the same time, the day you lose your motivation, you don't practice, you're going to lose it. Language never stays with you forever. If you don't practice it, it's like a muscle. You don't practice it, it's going to weaken. It's going to weaken a lot. So you need to maintain this motivation in order to continue to develop your skill into this particular language. But it's a fascinating world, the world of words, about how you acquire words and how do you communicate with the language which is not yours. That's something fascinating. Basic thing is, are you motivated enough to learn it? Do you have the basic reasons for which you should learn this particular language? If yes, go ahead. If not, don't waste your time.
What qualities or characteristics should an employee have to be successful at Nissan?
I think today, if there is one particular quality that we are looking for, is ability to learn. This ability to learn, because you know everything we know today is going to become obsolete very quickly. And the more we progress, the more the obsolescence is going to accelerate. So the worker at all the level, it can be at the top level, it can be on an assembly line, it can be on a showroom. the most important thing is having people with an open mind capable of learning. Obviously capable of doing after also. I mean, you don't want people who are only academicians who are ready to learn, but you want people who learn to do. So ability to learn is the most important element. Whatever you are hiring a lawyer or a controller or a financial guy or an engineer, you have to always discover what is his ability and eagerness to learn. That's fundamental. And after this, ability to act. Two main attributes that we are looking for employees when we hire them or when we train them is this ability to learn, ability to act. Then when you are progressing into the ranks, it's mainly performance, ability to perform. That means learning, acting, and then getting results.
Now, have you met all of the goals that you had when you began working at Nissan?
Oh no, you never meet all the goals you have. Never. I mean, it doesn't exist. I mean, if you meet all the goals you have, that means they are very conservative. They are very conservative. If you meet all the goals you have, that means they are very conservative. You put them to meet them. Okay? There is always a dose of uncertainty, and it is at the level of uncertainty where you have risk, but that's what's going to make you try to reach. And in the stretch movement, that's where you're going to grow. It's risky. If you always meet your goals, that means they are not set for you. That means you can do better. From time to time, if you don't fail from time to time, that means you're very conservative. That's what it means. So, now we come back to failure. Say, okay, so failing. Well, failing is part of life, and failing is the basic element of learning. You know, have you ever watched a kid learning? Really interesting. He learns with the pencil and with the eraser. With both. He makes mistakes, he erase, he correct, he learn. Then he make another mistake, he erase, and then he learn. And little by little, through the mistakes, he's going to get the knowledge. But that's life. Mistakes are part of the process of learning. Nobody becomes a PhD in mathematics without making any mistakes, without failing an exam. It doesn't exist. Well, in business, it's the same thing. Now, in business, what's important is how can you, and this part of management that you're going to all confront, how you're going to make sure that failure are not going to break people. That's number one. But at the same time, that failure is not something that at the end of the day people like or they accommodate with, because at the end of the day they will not rebound. So you need to put failure in a situation where it doesn't break you, but you don't like it, so it will encourage you to correct in order to avoid it next time. That's very important in management. So, and you have to maintain the line between, you know, accepting from time to time failure, but only in order for people to learn, adjust the learning, and come with a better performance. But the question of management, if you want people to succeed all the time, you will have to give them goals that they can meet all the time. If you give them goals that they can meet all the time, it means you are asking them to work below their potential. If you make people work below their potential, they're going to shrink. Okay? They're going to shrink. If you want people to grow professionally, you have to hire up the goals. You have to hire up the goals so they try to reach the goal. And to reach the goal, they're going to learn and adapt and innovate. So this balance between demand and stretch and achievement, it's a very delicate balance in a company. Very delicate balance in a company. So that's my answer to you. Now, it doesn't mean that you know, we're very comfortable when you don't meet a goal, it's okay. No, it's not okay. But when you don't meet it, you say, okay, what can I learn from it? How am I going to avoid this kind of trap next time? How am I going to come stronger after I had this bad experience?
Now, the Japanese market for cars has become stagnant with the total number of vehicles sold being reduced year by year. What could be the cause of this disinterest from the consumer? The student noticed that Nissan Rent-A-Car has the majority of its shops open 24 hours a day, while others offer the service from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Is there any possibility that the utilization of cars can be increased by rental cars?
Well, first, you say there is some kind of disinterest in car. Let's take back a little bit and consider the world market, 65 million cars. The mature market are obviously going down. US market is going down, Japanese market is going down, Western European market is going down. So in a certain way you can say, yeah, maybe with these statistics we can see that there is some kind of disinterest in the car. But boy, in China, in Russia, in India, in the Middle East, in South America, the first thing people want is a car. That's what the first thing people want. So the problem of car falling a little bit out of interest into some categories, it's true in mature market only. But in the booming, developing market, people want the car. That's the most important thing that they want because it gives them freedom, autonomy. They want to take their friends and their family. And people talk about small cars. They don't want small cars. Small car is for rich people. Developing countries don't want small car. They want low-cost car. But they want it as big as possible. That's the reality. I mean, you talk about somebody, small car is what I'm going to do with it, where I'm going to put my friends, where I'm going to put my family, where I'm going to put my, there's no use for a small car. Small car is for urban, developed countries. But developing countries, they want the biggest car possible at the lowest price possible, period. That's it. That's the car. That's why you explain cars like the Logan of Renault, because you can have 5 people, you have a big trunk, etc., and it's a very low price. That's why in our study about the $3,000 car, it's a very tricky study because we want to make sure that it's not a kind of cheap, small car, because people are not going to buy it. They want something where they can go with friends and family, they can transport, it's useful, and at the same time it's fun. So we should make sure that we are not influenced too much by the country in which we're living. The Japan market will go down, has gone down, will continue to go down. It is in our plans, we know it. Okay? So it's not, I mean, everybody, and the press is going to write every month that's the 27th month of decrease of the Japanese market, and in 3 years down the road they're going to say this is the 78th month of decrease of the market. But it's obvious, I can tell you the story already, I can write down. The market's going down, why? Because demography is going down, and there is less interest into the car, and this is something which is part of the trends that we're just going to have to assume. But the growth is not going to be here. It's not going to be in a developed country, in Western Europe, etc. The growth is going to be into the booming, developing market where you have had, let me give you one statistics. I take 1999 because this was the year of the signature of the Alliance. In 1999, the world car market was 54 million cars. Sold, 54. Last year, 65. Increase 11 million cars. Okay? Now, I take Japan, United States, Western Europe. There, in 1999, in these 3 areas, 40 million cars were sold. 40 million out of 54. Last year, 40 million cars were sold. Stagnation in 7 years. So the 11 million additional cars all came from developing countries. All, with a 70% average increase in 7 years. China leading the way, followed by India, the Middle East, Indonesia, Russia. All these countries are booming. So, if you look at the car industry by looking at the statistics in Japan, you're going to say, oh my God, what's going to happen here, you know? Every year we're going down, and the car is going cheaper and smaller and everything. Yeah, but car manufacturers in Japan are all global companies. And they are compensating this by selling more and putting plants into Russia and India and Middle East, and that's where they are compensating for it. That's the situation. So there is still a lot of passion for cars. There is still a lot of passion. Some of it are in mature markets. Decreasing a little bit, fine, it's a reality. But some of it's still in the, I mean, we're going to test it when, in 3 weeks, I'm going to take my pitch for advertising, 3 minutes. We're going to launch the GTR. GTR is an icon car. It's a super car of Nissan, sports car. We're going to put it at the Tokyo Motor Show. Right? The buzz around this car, before it even comes to the market, through the internet and the fans asking when the car is going to go out, how much is going to be sold, it's fantastic. You know, when you look at the buzz and the people interest, you don't say, well, there is less interest into cars like this. There is interest, decreasing a little bit, but developing markets boom.
Now, speaking of new car models, other car manufacturers like Chrysler, Volkswagen, and GM have been introducing retro models. Does Nissan have any plans to do this?
They have been tentatives, but frankly, I don't think it's a great idea. I mean, we have so many ideas for models that we did not run out of ideas to go for an older model and try to reshape it in a certain way. Don't expect any old model from Nissan to come back reshuffled, because we have so many ideas for new concept, new. By the way, this is the same thing for Renault. So don't expect it from any one of the two companies to come with an old model reshuffled and say that's our new model. We don't believe so much in it. Competitors believe in it, it's fine, but that's what competition is about. I mean, if you all do the same thing, it's not fun.
One issue that caught the students' attention was that former Nissan top managers didn't have strong knowledge about cars, and you had implemented a program where the top managers needed to spend time doing test drives and express their opinions about the products tested. What had happened in Nissan before joining with Renault to reach a situation where their top managers didn't have expertise about their products?
You know, I can only speculate about it, because obviously I was not there before 1999. But there were a lot of things wrong. How do you know that a company is in trouble before it runs out of cash or it's unprofitable, etc.? You know a company is in trouble when you take a look trends on a long period of time. In the case of Nissan between 90 and 1999, for 10 years period, I mean, I'm talking about, a crisis for 3 months here, had a practically an operating margin around 1% average. Return on invested capital around 1%. When you have a return on invested capital of 1% in the car industry, well, you have a problem. And when you have an operating margin about 1%, that's what led the company to be heavily indebted in 1999, more than $20 billion of debt, etc. So the situation was very difficult, and people were disconnected from the reality. As you say, top management, for example, the decision on car were made by the head of engineering, not by the executive committee. He was the competent guy to decide. The others did not know about the products. So you're not going to solve the problem of company by saying, oh, now all the executive committee is going to have to drive the cars and give an opinion. This by itself is not going to be a solution. This is part of a collection of change that you make into the company to make people more connected with the product at all the level of the company, and more connected with the customers at all the level of the company. So this change by itself is not going to solve anything. I don't want people to say, okay, no, I understand how I'm going to turn around the company. I'm going to ask all the executive committee, even though they don't understand the product, to come and understand the product. It's not sufficient. But giving the sign that the product is very important, and that at the top level everybody's going to see every single car which is going to come out of the company and give an opinion on it, very important, and very motivating also for the engineers working on the product.
Can you tell us what the fundamental differences were between General Motors and Renault and Nissan that ended the talks for mutual cooperation?
The difference is we wanted it, they didn't. So it's very simple. So when you go for a partnership, it's like you have to be both. Two people. And I say I'm not going to do anything hostile. I don't believe in this hostile approach. I'm more into alliance and cooperation, even though from time to time it's difficult. I think from the beginning, it was obvious that, we wanted something to happen they didn't want. I mean, the management didn't want.
Are you planning any further restructuring of production sites or other functions?
No, I don't think we're going to need it. I mean, if it's needed, we'll do it. But I don't think it's going to be needing it. Nissan is, this year, going to have a strong growth. Obviously, we had a very strong run between 1999 and 2006. 2006 was the first year where for the first time the sales went down 2%. And we didn't reach the forecast, the financial forecast. Instead of doing $4.5 billion of net profit, we made $4 billion of net profit. So you say, oh my God, Nissan has a problem. Which, by the way, it is. I mean, I was the first one to say we have a performance crisis, because you cannot neglect the fact that for the first time you're not reaching your financial target. That's something which is important. But all of a sudden people come around and say, oh, that's finished. no more magic touch, no more this, no more that, the company's collapsed, etc. Well, we said, okay, fine. Let's understand what happened. Same thing. You have a disappointment. You need to sit down very coldly and say, what did happen? What happened? What we need to change? What are the decisions? Beefing up your people to say, well, these kind of things may happen in the future, so we need to be strong and look at them very lucidly, take the conclusion, and rebound. Well, this year so far, I mean, we are on a 7% increase in our sales in markets which are very disappointing everywhere because, you know, the US market is going down, Japanese market is going down. We're doing well. So I'm very confident that, you know, you're going to see Nissan growing. And with the growth of Nissan, even though the Japanese market is going down, we're going to be fully using our capacity. So I'm not worried about it.
What do you think of Nissan's diversity status? Would you rate it good, satisfactory, or fair, or excellent?
So excellent is the best. Where do you put satisfactory and good? So good, so excellent, good, satisfactory, and fair. Okay, now, if I put Nissan in its context as Japanese company in Japan, I would say, in terms of diversity, compared to other Japanese companies, and particularly to our peers in the car industry, I would say we're good. And I'm being modest. I'm being modest. Why? Because we have much more women in management position. We have much more foreigners in management position. People say, oh yeah, but you know, you have the Alliance, you have a bunch of French people. It's not true. We have British people, we have American people, and we do not make a parade under the Triumph Arch every time we have a foreigner joining our board or our corporate officers. 30% of our corporate officers are foreigners. Okay, nobody knows it. Now, some Japanese company parade when they have one foreigner joining the corporate officer, like, you know, that's a big achievement. So, compared to Japanese company, I think it's good. And again, I'm being modest. Very, very modest. Now, compared to international standard, I would say it's okay. It's not good. I mean, we still need to develop it, but I think we're a very mature company to do it. And what's interesting is the effort on diversity we're doing in Nissan are helping also the efforts on diversity in Renault. Because, by the way, I mean, people think that diversity is only a problem in Japan. It's not true. It's not true. Diversity is a problem everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, I can tell you that, I mean, having two companies, Japanese engineers usually trust only another Japanese engineer. So they consider that another engineer, it's a little bit, but the French engineer is the same. Same. So we have a tendency to trust only people from our own culture, which is very human, very normal. So it's not something which is specific to Japan. It's something that you can see in many other companies. And that's why I think diversity has to be promoted everywhere. And the efforts done in Nissan are paralleled by the efforts we're doing inside Renault. And I think it's a strength for a company to be very diverse. Diverse is not only about women. It's about young people. It's about foreigners. It's about different kind of qualification, not only engineers, but marketers, financial people, controllers, etc. That's diversity. Diversity is having people of different background, different ideas, different cultures, different training working together. That's diversity. And usually it leads to much better decisions, more difficult decisions. To reach a decision is much more difficult because people have different opinions. But then when you reach a decision, it's usually much better.
What has been your proudest achievement?
Well, I hope I hope it's going to be in front of me. I mean, I hope that my proudest achievement is going to be something which is behind me. I'm still trying to reach something. But something I'm very proud of is that when I ask my kids if they had a father at home, they always said yes, they had a father at home. That's my proudest achievement. I'm very proud of it. That they didn't live with the president of Nissan in the house. They lived with their daddy and they didn't care about Nissan, they didn't hear about Nissan. That's probably one of the things which is the hardest thing to achieve. And I'm very proud of it, as long as they keep this image.
If you could do everything all over again, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently?
Everything. Well, everything, because we're learning people. I mean, obviously, today I know things I didn't know before. So if I had to do it again, knowing what I know, I would do everything different. Hopefully better, but you never know.
We have just a few more minutes left. Do we have any questions from the audience? Ambassador?
Yes.
But the ambassador asking question is unfair.
It will not be related to the car industry, and I would like to hear your comments, to probably have some comments on those things that may be a concern for a company like Nissan on the world economy. Things that governments do or don't do, and they should be concerned about. Things like the Doha round, or any comment that you may have on things that represent a challenge for the international community.
Yeah. Well, I think probably the most important issue for large companies today is making sure that the governments work to open up trade. That's very important. Open trade, Doha round, very, very important. Bring back the barriers, bring back the walls. That will make companies better. That will make consumers more happy. And that will give an opportunity for developing countries to develop. The experience is showing that it's not one way, it's both ways. That means developing country will develop, but developed country will get richer. Not only in terms of job developments, they are different, but also in terms of even financial flows. I mean, it's interesting to see what's going on today, that a lot of the investment accumulated in developing countries are coming back to developed countries. And this is totally normal. So I would say, answering your question, trade, open trade, bring back barriers in terms of for the economy.
We have time for one more question.
I have some experience with the automotive industry, working for parts suppliers. There's one thing that I could not understand from Renault and the Nissan. So you have a tremendous synergy when you bundle volumes. For example, you can have a B platform Nissan bundle with B platform Renault. But what I cannot understand is that from a purchase standpoint, you bundle it, but technically speaking, you have different standards for Renault and the Nissan.
Let's not forget, Renault and Nissan are not one company.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you have one company, you're going to have the same standards. But when you have two different companies, well, the question is, what's the best standard? And obviously, if you ask the French engineer, they're going to tell you mine. If you ask the Japanese engineer, they're going to tell you mine. Now, how you put them together? They are coming little by little to it. It takes time. But I don't want to force it on them, because it's back to the alliance is two partners that you have to respect, different identities, different culture, but working together for synergies. If you start to tell them, forget about your past, forget about your culture, forget about your knowledge, top down you have to do this, the alliance disappears. You're going to have a short-term gain, but a long-term pain. And one of the secrets of the alliance working so far is the fact that we are always pushing people to converge, but without imposing on them the same standard. Because when you impose on them the same standard, somehow you're denying them their culture. So I understand for the suppliers it's a little bit difficult, and they don't understand it always. But when I compare 1999 to 2007, they are converging. We have more and more standards which are common. There are still more to come, but the difference is it's coming rationally, with people deciding by themselves that maybe my standard is not the best, maybe your standard is not the best, let's adopt a third standard which is going to be common. So by not pushing too hard on this, we're trying mainly to play the long-term relationship and quality of the relationship of the alliance. Let's not forget that that's the only association of two large companies which is 7 or 8 years old, which is successful, and where people spend their time collaborating together and not fighting each other. There is no other example that I know of this magnitude. And this is due to the fact that we're always playing for the long term, and always saying, well, we need to make sure that we respect the identity of each company and the culture of each company, But we are always pushing towards more synergies, better results, and let people do it, because at the end of the day, they have a lot of common sense, but not on detriment of their identity and their virtue.
Last question.
I think so.
Thank you very much. I have a question. What would have been Renault today without Nissan?
That's a different story. That's a whole, we're going to restart for another hour.
Well, thank you very much. I heard that before you began in the automotive industry, you had wanted to be a teacher, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of Anaheim University students for this wonderful opportunity, for having you in front of the classroom. We will always save a spot in our faculty should you wish to return to that dream. And I'd also like to thank Coca-Cola, our corporate sponsor, for providing today's refreshments, which we invite you to enjoy out in the courtyard.
Okay, thank you.
I've just got a few questions on behalf of the university, really, in general. The first one is, what is your favourite book?
It's a book that I have advised to my kids, so I'm not sure they read it, but I think it's very interesting. That's a book that I learned a lot when I read it a few years ago, that I would advise your student to read. It's called The Road Less Traveled.
Right.
Very interesting book. I recommend.
Thank you very much. Where do you get your motivation from? Really, I mean, obviously we live in a time of information overload. Where do you get your motivation and your ideas from?
Well, it's usually motivation comes from the fact that you really want to make a difference. That's usually the source of you want to do a difference for your company, you want to do a difference for your team, you want to do a difference for society, you want to do a difference for your family. That's my main motivation. Want to contribute to make a difference. Want to be somebody who can make a difference in the life around you. Now, where you get the information from? I am mainly a reader. I read a lot. That's one of my few hobbies, is going to the library and picking books and taking them with me and reading them. And different kinds, you know, it can be different languages, different kinds. Actually, I'm reading a book on Tangier, the city in Morocco, about the history of Tangier, a fascinating book. Obviously, you learn also a lot by, you know, interacting with your kids. I mean, I have 4 children, so I learn a lot from them. New trends, new fashion, new habits, or even when they need help into an essay or into something that they don't know, you learn a lot through it.
Okay, thank you. Now, what kind of advice would you give an MBA student or an MBA graduate?
You need to know what you want. That's the most important thing. I've seen so many people who are starting careers or engaging professionally without knowing exactly what they want. And when you don't know exactly what you want, when you have hard decisions, it's very difficult to make them because you have no references. You don't know exactly what you want, you don't have. So I think knowing really what you want and knowing what you stand for is worth, for every MBA student, reflecting a little bit upon it, because it will help you a lot in your career and in your achievements in the future.